Hi, my name is Mel Giannone, President and Broker of Record here at Paramount Real Estate Properties, headquartered in the Greater Toronto Area. We specialize in the exclusive representation of tenant occupiers and investors of commercial property. And you're someone in my marketplace I'd like to do business with. You can check us out by clicking the link to our latest real estate podcast called CRE Next, Work Out Loud, where we share helpful insights on commercial real estate matters affecting you and your business. Today I'm looking at a building that is located in New Toronto, which is just west of downtown Toronto. So here's a building that sits in South Etobicoke. It's got about 11,000 people living in it, about 5,500 households. And so what I'd like to do, I think this would be a great case study for me to take you through how I go ahead and see if there is, or assess if there is, an opportunity. Just sniff out whether or not this is actually worth underwriting. So 4 things I need to understand. 1, I've got to know my market. That is to say, what is the market in the surrounding area? Could it support tenants? At what price? And at the end of the day, is there cash flow at the end that I can return to my investors? So know thy markets. Know thy costs. Let's say we take on a building like this. What kind of improvements would I have to make? What kind of property taxes will I be paying? Now, interesting backstory to this is that the last time it was sold back in 2000 for just under $400,000. Now, imagine what that's going to be like 25 years later, the capital gains on this baby, and then eventually the reassessment of its value, which currently is at about $1.6 million. Well, let's say that ends up being double. Imagine what the property taxes are like. So know thy costs. And lastly, know thyself. Let's say I take on a project like this. Do I have the skills and the means necessary to drive the value to my investors over a 5-year, 10-year period? And the last thing I would say, and probably the most important thing, is that you've got to know your exits. So before I go into a deal, I like to know where I'd like to land as I exit 5 years later or 10 years later, knowing that I've achieved everything that I could possibly achieve and got the returns that I wanted from day one. So those are the 4 things you got to know before you actually go into a deal. So looking around, here are my observations. This is a big box. It's about 26,000 square feet, about 8,000 or 9,000 square feet in change per floor, plus some common area and some external area. But it's pretty much just a concrete box. Could it be used for residential? Don't think so. It looks like this thing is maxed out on the lot line. Doesn't have any parking other than street parking. But it would fit in well with the surrounding area, which is all multifamily, multi-res. Now, the income levels in this neighborhood aren't the greatest, so I don't know if I can turn this into a retail shop. I don't think there's enough foot traffic for this to turn into some sort of a post office or department store of some sort, a Dollarama or a pharmacy, something like that that would be a little more recession resistant. And so I look at this and say, maybe the possible opportunity here is to work with the city in some sort of a service center. Couldn't be a medical clinic. Again, doesn't have parking around here. Maybe this could be a potential self-storage facility, whereas I can have the tenant occupy the ground floor and then convert the second floor into storage units, maybe servicing all these people here that live in small apartments and might need places for storage of all their extra stuff. So this is sort of the things that are going in my mind as I take a look at building, and before I even decide to underwrite it, are there enough red flags that warn me to stay away? Or is there a compelling enough story here that would make the basis for me to go and start doing some calculations? So what we got is a concrete facade, very limited building, windows. It's got eastern exposure, so you've got light coming in from the east, but very light coming into the building as the evening progresses because there's no building windows in the back where the sun would set. It looks to me like there would be enough here to warrant doing a little exercise as to what would this thing be worth should I decide to put in an offer. And then getting back to my customer who is interested in occupying the space to say, if I bought it at X, would you rent it at Y, giving me return of, let's say, Z. So that would be the next step. But today is pretty much boots on the ground, assessing whether or not this warrants the underwriting and eventually maybe even an offer or a letter of intent. So I want to thank you for joining me on this portion of this podcast. And if you learned anything from this, please like, subscribe, share,